Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Now, we're going to do a follow-up here to yesterday's gender bill, that wonderful result in the court where sanity ruled and that women all over Scotland and girls, and children in particular, have been protected from the predations that would have been caused by just simply allowing men to identify as women so that they could gain access to safe spaces. Now, it is very controversial for Humza Yousaf because it is one of the legacy policies that he inherited from his great friend and mentor, the Sturge. But unfortunately, it's a very bad one for him personally. First of all, of course, because his particular group that he likes to go and visit on a regular basis and get on bended knee to, they don't really like it, and they've probably been telling him, he shouldn't really push it. But unfortunately, he has to, simply because he's got the Greens on board, and we all know that they are actually in charge of Scotland. It is effectively a Green government wagging the yellow dog. But on top of that, of course, he doesn't like losing anything. He's got a terribly large ego for someone with such a small amount of talent and brains. And so he will be tempted, I think, to challenge it. But it looks like that many within the party will tell him, don't. Let's have a look. Now, of course, this issue is bigger than just the trans rights. We've already touched on them today. I'm not really going into the trans rights. That's not the issue here. The issue we've got here is one of, I suppose you could call it governance. If he continues to push this in order to keep the Greens on board, then he is effectively saying that he wants Scotland's top court to be overruled by the UK Supreme Court, which for him must seem a bit of a dichotomy. Why do you want independence? Well, in order to get this, we've got to show independence. And how are you doing that? Oh, well, we're getting we're getting the UK Supreme Court to override our own. There's a bit of an imbalance of power there. You also have the fact that he's going to have to then spend even more money, knowing that he's going to lose, in order to appease the Greens and keep them on board for no reason whatsoever. Most people in the party now want the Greens gone, but he lacks the ability and the cojones, really, to run as a minority government, which is another problem that he's got. He really just does not have the cojones for the job. Also, I would suggest that if he was a true leader, he'd say, look, we've given it a best shot. We're going to stop it now. We're going to go in. We've got the last sort of 2.5 years. We need to do something. Say to the Greens, you've got two choices. You either accept it, remain in government, and we'll move on and try and get other things done, or you can stamp your tiny little feet and walk. And of course, they're sitting there earning all this excellent money as being ministers. They've got their little, grubby hands on the levers of power. They're liking who they are. They're important. Look at us. Look at me. Look, I'm important. And so, of course, they're not going to walk. And if the SNP actually had a leader, one of two things would happen. Either they'd say, right, this is it. It's not happening. We're stopping it. We're dropping it. Do what you want. Don't care. Or, if it was Kate Forbes, she'd just go, do you know what? Enough of your shit. You're out. Bang. End of the Butte House Agreement. Off you go. Bye. And that'd be it. And the Greens would be gone. Either way, if you're giving them a choice, they'll stay. Or you throw them out because they're morons. But of course, Humza Yousaf can do neither. The old Ken doll of Scottish politics. There's nothing down the front. Smooth like Ken. But anyway, we'll have a look at this because it's now an internal party matter. Does he go? Does he fight it? Or does he fold and admit that it's over? I think he'll want to fight it because ego and also scared of losing the Greens. But everyone else in the party knows the jig is up and it's time to put this matter to bed, move on, and see what other area of policy they can utterly destroy in Scotland. Anyway, Humza Yousaf urged to drop any plan to appeal the court defeat of a gender reform. Senior SNP figures will urge the Prime Minister, he wishes, the First Minister to accept the game is up over the Gender Recognition Reform Act. Yousaf will be advised by senior SNP allies to reject any appeal of the government's humiliating court defeat on his gender reform law. It's not his gender reform law. It was Sturgeon's at the whim of the Greens. And the chances are he won't win it. And I want also to see, a tangent here. He said that he would only appeal it to the court session that he did if the legal advice was that he had a chance of winning. And he says he's not publishing the legal advice until the court case is done, because obviously he knows, and we know, that the legal advice would have been you have got no chance of winning this. And so if he's wanked away nearly £250,000 and the legal advice shows in advance that they had no chance of winning, then that bill must be presented to the SNP and they must repay that money. If the legal advice was that they had some chance of winning, fair enough. But if it said, no, you're not going to win, or you're very unlikely to win, then they should be charged. And send the bill to the SNP, make them pay for it. And, of course, the UK government's bill, another 100,000 on top. That's £250,000. Hand that bill to the SNP. Let's see them pay that. We did a video the other day. They haven't had a single donation for 3 months. They are in deep, deep trouble, aren't they? Anyway, the SNP government suffered a humiliating and humbling defeat in the Court of Session after a judge ruled Westminster had acted lawfully by blocking Hollywood's Gender Reform Act, which we know. Fantastic news, great video, did very well yesterday, I must be honest. Not surprised, eh? Not a surprise. SNP ministers have already racked up a legal bill of around 230,000. Well, 330,000 because the UK government want to load their bill onto the SNPs. They've got to pay that. And these figures and costs could spiral if they appeal the decision. A senior party figure said Yousaf would be well advised by supporters to call it quits. He says, we've done our best with this. Times move on and we have a new First Minister. Although he's already jaded. He's only 9 months into the job and he's already an old leader. His time is past. He's done, isn't he? He's not going to be there much longer. The insider agreed that GRR is a Nicola Sturgeon legacy issue. And there are some people who just think there's no point in appealing. There isn't. It's not going to happen. The source said walking away before Christmas would be the best course of action as it would allow Yousaf to start afresh in the new year. And the legal row began when Hollywood passed the GRR bill with cross-party support in December last year. And then, of course, Alistair Jack invoked Section 35 first time and basically wrote it off. And they went, no, you can't do that. And they took them to court and then they lost. And I bet the legal advice would be that they knew they were going to lose and did it anyway because he dare not upset the mad lunatics of the Green Party. Nicola Sturgeon, the then First Minister whose government backed the law, described Jack's decision as an assault on devolution. No, it's not. It's the protection of women and girls in Scotland. That's what it is. Westminster was doing what the SNP were afraid to do. Stand up to the Greens and say, no, we're not allowing predators access to women's safe spaces. Yousaf pledged during the SNP leadership contest to appeal the Section 35 order in court, despite misgivings from some in his party. Campaigners against GR had warned the legislation could risk the safety of women and girls. We know it can. We only have to look at Andrew Miller to see the dangers. In a written statement, Lady Haldane backed the UK government position, much against many people's thoughts, because she's taken a stance on this in the past that's been pro-trans. So I think that was quite surprising, but welcome, absolutely. She rejected the argument for the Scottish ministers that the use of Section 35 veto was an impermissible intrusion onto constitutional settlement. No, because the constitutional settlement included it in the rules. You accepted those rules at the time. Anyway, Yousaf responded by saying his government would now take time to consider the court's decision. Well, basically, he's taking time to see if he's got the balls to fight it. And of course, no, he hasn't. So he's probably going to have to put an appeal in at great expense because he doesn't want to be a minority leader. Coming down, and it's Ian Murray, the Shadow Scottish Secretary, said it is disappointing this legislation ended in the courts, but this ruling should be respected, and it absolutely should. Maggie Chapman opened her big gob, but we don't really want to hear what that turd says. She's going on, it's a democratic outrage. Well, it's not really a democratic outrage. I will just address this. She said it was democratic outrage, but nowhere in any party's manifesto did they say that they wanted to make it easy for men to try and become women, pretend to be women and predate children. Nobody voted for this. There was no democratic mandate for it. It wasn't in your manifesto. And so if you truly want the answer, the vast majority of people in Scotland are against it. And so therefore democracy was upheld. Thank heavens for Westminster safeguarding democracy in Scotland. And if you truly want to allow mentally ill men to dress as women and pretend they're women, put that to a vote. Let the people of Scotland decide whether they want mentally ill men able to predate the children. I think you'll be surprised at the answer, Maggie. I won't be surprised, and you, good viewer, you won't be surprised. But in Maggie Chapman's warped, degenerate world, it would be astounding for her, because she just assumes everybody likes to predate children. And coming up. So it is starting to look like it's over when you're getting senior members of the SNP saying, look, let's stop it, let's drop it, let's move on. I think part of it, of course, is that a lot of them, whilst they sort of pushed the bill, they did so because at the time Nicola Sturgeon was in charge and they didn't want to upset the leaderine. But subsequently they probably just thought, well, I've gone in so deep now, I've got to stick with it, otherwise it looks stupid. But I wasn't necessarily pro what it stood for. There's that, and then there's also the fact that the Greens have over the last year or so become incredibly toxic and are very, very unpopular. And I think some of the backbenchers will use this opportunity, if you will, to try and divide the party, divide that agreement, put that wedge there between the Greens and the SNP, and hopefully sort of ping the Greens out of Parliament, out of government anyway. I think they might be fruitless on that. I don't think the Greens will willingly give up the agreement, but it may well come that the pressure is heaped on Humza, especially if he says he's minded to appeal this. I think at that point there'll be a lot of dissent in the ranks, and I think that will hasten. First of all, it'll hasten the end of the Butte House agreement, but I think also it will hasten the end of the Humza Yousaf regime of incompetence and stupidity. So, fingers crossed. Anyway, that's finished there. Thank you very much for watching. We'll move on. I've got another video to do. I'll get that up, and then I'm going to have to go and take the dog for a walk, so there might be a gap, and then we'll move on. But until then, stay safe, stay well, and enjoy your Saturday morning if you possibly can. I don't know where it's like where you are. It's absolutely chucking down here, so big coat and a wet dog. Bye.